Yesterday evening, the BBC, in their Panorama current events show, interviewed Nigel Farage, as they are doing with all the other party leaders, I believe. I didn't watch it at the time because I don't have a TV licence, so I can't watch live TV. But I did find it on the internet this morning, and I'll let you have a link to the site I found it on, because I'm not going through the whole thing. It would take too long. The interview was nearly half an hour long, and if I stopped to talk about everything, the whole show would be about an hour. But I am going to go through a couple of what I see as salient points. Okay, I'm granniopteryx. All right, let's get started.
Nigel Farage, welcome.
Thank you.
I want you...
So here's Nick Robinson looking like he just got out of bed. What happened to the smartly dressed interviewers who at least had time to shave before they went out on air? And he's wearing a blue suit. Now let's get this out of the way. He's wearing a blue suit, brown shoes and red socks. No wonder he's not wearing a tie. What would he actually have anything to match up with there? Anyway, that's my observation. Okay, so on to the first question, which was at 0:48.
I put them to you. I want to begin, perhaps unusually, by saying
just a minute. The patronising tone is almost unbearable here. Just thought I'd mention.
Congratulations, Nigel Farage. If the polls are to be believed, and they might not be, you're to play your part in wiping out the Tory party, producing the greatest Labour majority in history, a political earthquake in Britain. It doesn't.
Now, just a minute. You see, he starts off with this patronising tone. In my opinion, that's a technique. He's doing that because he's an actor. We think of him as an interviewer. No, he's an actor. He starts with this patronising tone because that way he thinks he's going to wrong foot Farage, who will be so upset, so disconcerted about the patronising tone that he will be out of balance when Nick Robinson then hits him with the accusation that he's destroying the Conservatives, something that most people in the BBC would be only too happy about anyway. But I want you to notice how well rehearsed this is. Look at this. So he starts off with a small picture.
Nigel Farage.
And he waves his hand, and then the small picture becomes a large one. See how well rehearsed that is? That's a piece of scripted activity. Can he do magic? No. He's gone through this with his Panorama team. I'll bet they've been rehearsing that for hours before this interview. And then Farage says that whole illustration is out of date.
That map was produced by Savanta Polling. Okay, their survey work, their field work began on the 4th of June.
Early.
Very early, before their field work began, before I declared I was in the race.
Oh, so you could...
Right, okay. So then he switches, I got it 2:55, to he who must not be named, the horror words of the Chatterati. Donald Trump.
Farage standing in front of 10 Downing Street. What you're saying to people is, I'm no longer that chat show host. I'm no longer that guy running for Parliament expects to lose again. I want to be your Prime Minister. Is your aim to do what your friend Donald Trump's done in the United States? There he is.
Right. That guy is so naive. He thinks that, naive, so up his own fundament that he thinks that mentioning Donald Trump is going to bring Farage down in flames. What he doesn't realise is that most sensible people would instead think, Trump and Farage, what a great combo. Good God, these BBC types are thick as bricks. OK, now on my notes here, I have 410.
Let's look at the man who you said was the statesman you most admire.
No, I said
Vladimir Putin.
Hold a second.
Again, that was, as you can see, a well-rehearsed...
Let's look at the man who you said was the statesman you most...
A well-rehearsed picture of Putin. You can see how he's following a script here, can't you?
Admire.
No, I said...
Vladimir Putin.
Hold a second.
And again, an out-of-context quote. Farage does a good enough job of responding. You don't need my comment. I'm just pointing out the well-rehearsed series of what those clots in the BBC think of as ambushes. OK, 6:20.
Everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansionism.
But I'm asking you about, because it's your judgment, you want to be Prime Minister. Let me ask you about someone else.
My judgment has been way ahead of everybody else's in understanding this.
I want to ask you about another leader that you've said you've admired. Let's take a look at Liz Truss, another leader that you say you've admired.
Right. And he brings up Liz Truss. Again, as far as the BBC is concerned, another toxic brand. But, you know, in my opinion, if the Tories hadn't assassinated her and put Sunak, the sock puppet, up in her place, they wouldn't be in the fix they are. The whole way the Conservatives have been behaving reminds me a lot of Macbeth. They thought they could do a better job of running the place, and it turns out they ended up with their treason crashing back down on them. I haven't forgotten the way they refused to rally round her simply because that's not the person they wanted, although the party, the grassroots party, did want her. And they brought in everything they could to undermine her, and then they put Sunak in charge. And I haven't forgotten that, and I don't think that many of the people in the Conservative associations have forgotten that either. OK.
Of the BBC, no doubt on your tombstone it would say the man who brought us Brexit, wouldn't it? It's a failure, though.
No.
Brexit is a failure. It's only a failure because the BBC wants it to be a failure. And I think most people realise that there's been a lot of lack of enthusiasm in our government and in people like Nick Robinson to make sure that Brexit is a failure. And I'll just go on with some really dishonest argumentation here. It says here 11:51. It's probably a bit further on than that, but let's start there and I'll cut it out.
Done with it. And that's why...
So it's someone else's fault.
If you put me in charge, it'd be very, very different.
Okay,
but of course, they didn't do that, did they?
Let's imagine you in charge.
And the Conservative Party never believed in Brexit. They never believed in it. They picked it up as a political opportunity, and they failed to deliver. Deregulation and immigration were the gains that we could have had. We haven't had them because of the Conservative Party.
Well, let's talk about immigration. And let's imagine you in charge. Here we are. We've got your contract here. Well, and this effectively says...
No, one second. That contract says something different. That contract makes very, very clear, and I said this when I promoted it, we are not going to be in government, but... Now, hang on. You know, the Liberal Democrats...
I'm trying to wriggle out of what's in here,
It's certainly not. The Liberal Democrats...
He said, did you hear Nick Robinson saying that Farage is trying to wriggle out of things because he's put ideas here that he can't put into action because he's not going to be in government. Right, so he uses the words wriggle out. Just listen to this.
Last time round. Joe Swinson, vote for me, I'm going to become Prime Minister. It wasn't credible in any way at all. What I'm arguing is these are the ideas, these are the policies, these are the debates that we'll fight and campaign on for the next 5 years.
Sounds awfully like to me that you're trying to wriggle out some of the detail.
There you are. You see that under the breath wriggle out, which is a debating technique of the truly terminally dishonest. Okay, now let me go on to...
Let me ask you the question, right? Yeah, because you'll have a chance.
Yeah.
In this contract...
Did you see the way he was sort of sitting back there? As if he's thinking of something. He's not thinking of anything. Everything he's asking there, and the way he's asking it, is very carefully scripted.
Says that you'll make exceptions. You'll make exceptions for essential skills, particularly around healthcare. So, does that mean, just quickly, as time is short...
Time is short, patronising little rat.
Well, not until we employ the British one.
OK, let's carry on.
And for the British government to have been paying £1,000 per nurse for health trusts to employ foreign nurses. I mean, can you believe the scandal of what's been going on here?
But let's go through paramedics.
OK. Then there's the next one another thing. You see, he's answering all these questions, and I'm not going to, as I said, I can't go through all of them without taking up a huge amount of time, which you probably don't want to spend.
The money back. Well, so you do take your wallet to the doctors because you pay, and then your insurance gives you back. It's a big change. I'm just asking you whether you want to do it.
Well, it costs you nothing to go to the doctor, right? Because you get it back. And the reason they do that, and by the way, British GPs have this problem, is people book appointments and don't turn up.
Okay.
All right? So actually, think about it, it makes sense.
Okay, understood. It's quite a big change, and you want to make it. Now, in this manifesto, and this is why I suggest...
I want you to look at this, because he reminds me of a headmaster going through a young reprobate's homework. Watch this.
It's quite a big change, and you want to make it. Now, in this manifesto, and this is why I suggest you might be...
Contract.
Well, you can call it a contract. I'll call it a manifesto.
No, it's a horrible word.
In this document,
yeah.
I mean, there are promises to spend more on health, and more police, and more soldiers, and tax cuts for this group, tax cuts for that group, tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for the poor. Everybody gets everything they want. It's like Christmas when you open this.
What do you think of that?
The biggest domestic policy in there is raising the level at which people start paying tax to £20,000 a year. Why?
What, it all pays for itself?
Well, hang on a second. Why? Because there are a lot of people in this country living on benefits who don't want to be on benefits.
I'm asking you where you get 140 billion
I'm just about to explain to you.
That is massive.
Well,
Robinson isn't impressed at the idea of somebody earning under £20,000 a year and not paying tax. He left the idea of earning £20,000 a year. He left that a long time ago. He might pay that to his nanny. Right, I'll let you hear it.
That means if you're on benefits now and you go to work and work more than 16 hours a week, you're worse off.
I still don't know where the money's coming from.
Well, number one, we will get people off the unemployment register into work.
It's not going to raise you £140 billion a year, so I can tell you. You were on I'm a Celebrity. You should have been on Fantasy Island.
I get out of it.
Now, so what he did there was he brought up Farage's reality TV appearance. Of course, that's way beneath Mr. Robinson, isn't it? That Jesus loves him more than words can say. Hey, hey, hey. Sorry, couldn't resist that. And Farage turns it into a polemic about our suicidal net zero policies, which Robinson just doesn't know how to react to.
I tell you what is nonsense. Real nonsense. The Labour and Conservative net zero policies. And why are we not debating it?
Well, we are.
No. You won't debate it with them. They won't debate it with you. And this is the remarkable thing about this election, is how few differences there are between Labour and Conservative. They are both committed to decarbonising the grid. The estimated cost, listen to this, the estimated cost is between 2 and 3 trillion. It's a ridiculous number. We're quite confident we can save over 30 billion a year just by getting rid of this ludicrous commitment and going for a longer term plan of nuclear energy, which is carbon free.
That's why I want to ask you what underlies this, if I may, on climate.
Now, not being able to come to grips with that, Robinson finally brings out the big guns, racism.
Your cause, yours particularly.
No,
they think it's because those people believe that that's what you really think, and they listen to some of the divisive and provocative things you've said over the years and say, Nigel's our guy.
Cobblers. Absolute cobblers.
Absolutely great. He brought out the right word there, didn't he?
You know, I talk about things that are worthy of debate. I often get shouted down and abused by the political class or media class. And then you know what happens, Nick? 2 or 3 years later, the things that I've said become mainstream debate. And I've always been absolutely clear about this. And you look at, you know, take the Brexit Party, for example, that won the European elections back in 19. We were, not with any positive discrimination, the most diverse group in that European Parliament. This is what I believe. I believe regardless of race or religion or sexual preference, that everybody should be treated equally. I don't believe in group rights. I don't believe in dividing us up. And I think, you know, Martin Luther King said in that famous speech, I want my kids to be judged not by the colour of their skin.
Sure.
I believe in meritocracy.
Yeah, you said you admired Enoch Powell and you criticised the first non-white British Prime Minister for not understanding our culture. That's why people think...
He brought out the racism card, didn't he? When all else fails, bring out racism.
He doesn't understand our culture.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he would have stayed at D-Day to honour the remaining remnants of that generation.
You said it about a non-white politician. Let me just finish this interview by
asking. He's too upper class. He's too detached. Sure. He couldn't go down the pub and meet ordinary people. You know that, I know that.
Let's finish by asking you a question.
And now, here's the obviously pre-written final comment that some BBC scriptwriter thought would be the devastating blow, which of course, because it was pre-written, completely ignores absolutely every question that Robinson put to Farage during the interview. And so let's hear this pre-scripted question.
To address the audience. You say in a way that you want to restore trust in British politics. And what we've done over the last half hour or so is say, well, he's a Putin admirer, he's a Trump backer, he's Liz Truss applauding, he's divisive.
You see, just everything that Farage refuted, he's bringing it up because obviously it was there in the script.
Are you really the man to restore trust in British politics?
And hang on, look at that lean forward moment, full of sincerity. Let's go through that again.
In British politics. And what we've done over the last half hour or so is say, well, he's a Putin admirer, he's a Trump backer, he's Liz Truss applauding, he's divisive. Are you really the man to restore trust in British...
Oh, yeah. Do you... I mean, what a ham that guy is. OK.
Politics.
That's a very metropolitan way of putting things. Do you know what I am? I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, I'm a campaigner. I stand up against big institutions when they behave badly, whether they're banks or out-of-touch bureaucracies based in Brussels. And very often...
In my opinion, the only problem of trust during that whole encounter was the trust we know we can't have with organisations like the BBC. And then let's just finish up with their final comment.
I will.
Nigel Farage, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Next up in our leader interviews, the co-leader of the Greens, Adrian Ramsey.
Right, the co-leader of the Greens, Adrian Ramsey. So I took the trouble to look up the Greens because I wasn't really sure who was leading them. Apparently, they have two leaders. There's this one, Carla Denyer, or maybe Denier, and then there's this one, Adrian Ramsey. So they're going to be talking to him. The Greens are so disorganised that they can't even come up with a single leader. And then I just thought I'd have a look. I wanted to see if there are any scriptwriters credited at the end of this show. So I carried on ringing it. Director Carolyn Wilshire, Studio Technical Operations, Simon Morris, Abby Mrochinska, David Kwan, Amita Parekh, Ali Mustafa Ali and Robert Grieve. Right. Picture editor Andrew Hill, graphics Stelios Thukydides and Sarah Scott. Production team, Anne Moore, Javan Reed and Jaspal Dadwell. The makeup is done by the makeup team. Digital technician is Jack Willis. Digital producer Emma Jacobs. Producers Leala Padmanabhan, Neil Bennett, Joel Massey and Daniel Kramer. Executive producers Adam Grimley and Will Bowden. They haven't even credited the scriptwriters, but, well, at least it's a diverse lot, isn't it? Never worried that the BBC hasn't gone in for DEI in a big way. OK, well, there you have it, my take on the Farage interview. Yeah. Now you know why I don't listen to these interviews more often. OK, till next time. You can help my channel by clicking like, by subscribing, by clicking the notification bell and by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels are in the description, also links to donation sites, but really the best way you can help me is simply by clicking like. Thank you.